And so when I say Chinese, I want you to scream out the nation that's associated with this. For example, if I say Chinese, you're going to say what?
China.
All right, let's say it with authority. When I say Chinese, you say what? China. All right, that's just a test right there. So here we go. Chinese.
China.
Russian.
Russia.
Italian.
Italy.
German.
Germany.
Swedish.
Sweden.
Korean.
Korea.
Egyptian.
Egypt.
Nigerian.
Nigeria.
Black.
Nothing. Tell him, Pastor. Tell him, Pastor. Black, nothing.
I hope you were able to successfully identify the issue.
The lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. They want us to sell our souls to barter profit. Like God's property, it's hard to market. So we steady to aim, keep your eyes on target. 'Cause when you got to drive, yeah, they'd rather you park it. But I don't valet, you ain't getting these keys. I'm keeping closed hands, I'm on bended knee. I'm just a reflection, dealing with 8 sections. Art mixed with life, you can feel the convection. Your lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said
The same people that have stripped us, of our identity and labeled us as a color have told us what it means to be black.
Today, it is prohibited, and you can Google this, to do a DNA test in Israel. Totally forbidden. Wrong. It's illegal. It's a crime. You'll be jailed if you do a DNA test in Israel. Why? Because they know the truth will come out. You come from Poland, you come from Ukraine, you came from Europe, you came from everywhere else. And they were the original Middle Eastern Jews who lived together with the Muslims and the Christians for centuries. For centuries. So what happened to a lot of the Jews?
You know what you are? You're an ancient Israelite.
Ancient is there. That's who we are. That's who we are. So if you give me time, if you give me time,
but
all that he said.
No, we don't have
so many years.
I know. Look at this. This is pages and pages of notes. And I promise we'll give more teaching. But here is my challenge to you.
All right.
I'm hearing some of your traditions. It's like the days of the Bible.
Yes.
Do you want to remain ancient Israelites, or you want to be Jews? Do you want to?
No, Miss Sophia.
No, Miss Sophia, no!
The entire Bible is about black people. Not only was Jesus black, but every character in the Bible seems to be black too. Yeah, Zephaniah and Jeremiah and Jebediah, those all aren't white people names, okay? And Jesus wasn't some tan, partially melanated Middle Eastern person either. I'm talking straight up black dude, okay? Even in the book of Revelation, when you get the vision of Daniel, he's describing someone with feet like burnt brass and white woolly hair, and we've got the deep running water voice with the red eyes, and you guys, he's black. The Jewish people are black people, like Kanye was right.
And so when he's saying he's coming to redeem, while he would say, redeem Israel, O God, out of all their troubles. First thing they need to be redeemed at, more dangerous than Hamas, more dangerous than Muslim neighbors, are internal these, and there's another biblical name, these who say they are Jews and are not.
I was going to ask you about that. In Revelation 3:8, I think, I was going to ask you that question. Does that refer to this time, or can it refer to this time?
It's Revelation 3:9. Indeed, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan who say they are Jews and are not, but lie.
Yeah.
And there's a different application for it.
So we're supposed to we're just being told that anti-Semitism is now criticizing Israel. Anti-Semitism is anything they want it to be. They can't even define it. They admit in this bill that they've passed through the House that there's really truly no actual protection for Jews, but they're just making it up as they go because they want to say, well, but Semites, which we shouldn't even be using that word anymore because most Jews who practice the religion of Judaism or who are culturally Jewish, even if they don't practice the Jewish religion, but they're culturally Jewish, like many are culturally Christian. Many of us celebrate Christmas, but we're not Christian. That's cultural Christianity. It is what it is, right? They can't define it. They're putting all these rules on us. We shouldn't even allow them to use the term anti-Semitism. It's not real. Most of these Jews are not Semites.
And then we're told, well, what we do here in Palestine, or as they call it, the land of Israel, is, we've returned. We have a legitimacy because we used to be here and now we're back. But that doesn't really stand any kind of serious test either. I don't know any Jewish person anywhere that can trace their roots back to the ancient Hebrews. I don't think anybody like that exists. We know Palestinians in refugee camps and elsewhere have the deeds to their land and the keys to their home. I know no one Jew in the world or Jewish family in the world that can do that. So how could we claim that we were once there when we have absolutely no way to show that? We have nothing. So we're not really from there. We're not really natives. I mean, we're certainly not Palestinians, most of us.
You see, the Bible makes a distinction, Mr. President, between two groups of Jews. One is called the synagogue of Satan. There are two different kinds. There are those people, in the latter days, it's called the remnant of God's people, which will be Jewish people. And then there's the synagogue of Satan. And nearly all of your religious deceptions in the latter days, what the Bible speaks, latter days can be 1,000 years, what they call the synagogue of Satan. In other words, they are energized by a supernatural power called the devil. This is what the Bible teaches, whether you believe it or don't believe it. This is the biblical teaching, and this is what I believe. And I believe that they have a strange brilliance about them. They're smart, and they are energized, in my judgment, by a supernatural power.
Well, also they do something else. They're not smart.
And you see, of course, Hitler didn't. They had a stranglehold on Germany, on the banking of Germany, on everything in Germany, and the media. They had the whole thing, you see. But he went about it wrong. But this stranglehold has got to be broken, or this country is going to go down the drain.
Hitler was, and the Nazis, of course, expanded on Margaret Sanger's approach to eugenics, right? Eugenics was a movement that was born in the United States under hard doctrines of racism with the intent of eliminating the tribe of Judah in the African-American community in this country, right? To eliminate them. With the intent of eliminating the tribe of Judah in the African-American community in this country, right? To eliminate them.
With the intent of eliminating the tribe of Judah in the African-American community in this country, right? To eliminate them.
It's going to be the first woman president, and that's incredibly exciting. And, she's Indian, she's black, she's everything. You can be more than one thing. It's incredible. I'm Jewish and Irish. I wish I was black. Every white Jewish guy wishes he was black. Every white Jewish guy wishes he was black.
Every white Jewish guy wishes he was black.
You would not influence me. I am my own person. I am a strong black woman.
Oh, Miss Sophia.
No, Sophia, no!
Genesis chapter 11, verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you.
Wanted to say peace and blessings to everyone. Hope all is well with you guys. I know this is an unscheduled live that I'm doing early during some of you guys' evening drive home from work and so forth. But just wanted to get this momentum going again, especially with some foundational teachings, starting with, as I covered over the weekend, the lie of the red heifer. I prove with scripture that the red heifer has nothing to do with the rebuilding of the temple, but it simply deals with, when we deal with purification, it deals with cleansing someone who are in mourning over a loved one who had died, or someone that had touched a dead body, things along that line. It had nothing to do with the dedication of any of the temples. It has nothing to do with the dedication of the tabernacle. And as we transition to this lesson, I want to deal with the 613 laws. And as you see here, question everything, 613 laws. And I want to really walk you guys through. I'm not going to give a lot of commentary. Just want to get through these slides because I have a lot to cover. Some of this information is going to be a refresher to some of you guys because I like to periodically go over certain things just to lay the foundation down. And so that way, some of you guys that may be joining for the very first time, you guys can still be caught up with some of the things that I teach here. And so I want to also say this here. Let's not be a distraction in the comment section. I know we have trolls that tend to jump in the comment section, especially when I'm having certain discussions. And how do you know someone is trolling? Is when I speak on something with scripture, the accuracy of the text, allowing the scriptures to speak for themselves, and yet someone wants to still be disruptive inside the chat or try to take the conversation to another area that we are not discussing. So I want to make this clear. We are focusing on the 613 laws, whether or not if that's a valid number. So we're going to question that. All right. So let's go to get into it. Let me just look at the chat real quick just to see what's in here. All right. Let's see here. Let me just look through here real quick before we get started. All right. Let's see here. All right. Let me go ahead and knock some of this down because I see some is already, disputing already inside the comment section well before this lesson even started. So family, let's go ahead and, save that for another time, especially I see someone want to post something about the hours in the day and when the day starts. I already did a lesson on that. I would encourage you to go look up the lesson, what day is the resurrection. Go look at that. And I can tell you, I addressed that Leviticus passage that you are looking at and using that selectively to say that that's when the days start. Because also when you read Leviticus 23, you see evening to evening. So let's not get caught up into those specifics. If you have a question or if you want to question certain things, save it for that, or we'll do another lesson on that and bring that discussion here into that lesson. But right now we want to just deal with the 613 laws. And I'm not trying to say, I didn't say what I said to disrespect anyone, but sometimes we can just start arguing about things that's not even part of the discussion. All right, so let's go to get into it, family. I want to show you with scripture and with historical facts that There is no such thing as a 613 laws. And why is this important? Some people may say, you know what? It's not a big deal. Yes, it is a big deal. Because whether you agree or disagree, right, you have many, for example, in the church that use the 613 laws as part of their argument by stating that we're not under what? The law. And then you have others that are brothers and sisters that are in this awakening that believe that there are 613 laws. And I'm going to show you that's completely flawed. No such thing. So let's go ahead and get into the lesson. Don't want to prolong getting into the lesson. I don't want to hold you guys up as you guys are transitioning from work. So let's go ahead and get into it. Questioning everything. Question everything. The 613 laws needs to be questioned. So again, we already proved that the red heifer has nothing to do with the third temple or any temple in terms of building or rebuilding a temple. So now we need to understand the 613 laws. So I want to start with Daniel chapter 7, verse 23, because so many quote this passage, whether you in this awakening or outside this awakening, so many within the end time prophecy area, will go to Daniel chapter 7, verse 23, 24, 25. They'll quote this, but not give you the proper clarity of what this text is actually saying. So let's go to Daniel chapter 7, starting at verse 23. And I'm going to use all of this to tie into the 613 law doctrine. Let's start here, right? Verse 23. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse, in other words, Shana, from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down, and break it in pieces. So we're going to highlight and really focus in on this portion of the text where it says, which shall be diverse. So let's go to the Hebrew dictionary definition and see what this word diverse means, Shana. As you see here, it says to alter, change. And if you want to add some additional synonyms here, we can add manipulation, alter, change, manipulation, modify. So this particular beast is going to have the attributes of modifying, altering, changing the things of the Most High. Make every attempt to change the things of the Most High. This is the fourth beast that we are dealing with. So let's go to the etymological dictionary definition of this word diverse, and let's see what it says. It reads, different in kind, not alike, essentially different. It goes on, it tells us turn different ways, disagreeable, unkind, and it says hostile. But this is interesting here. When we go down to what's highlighted in red, where it says the sense, including and promoting persons of previously underrepresented minority identities. That is interesting. So the question is, who is this beast? Who is this beast? Who is this beast that will operate under the spirit of altering, changing, and manipulation? Who is this beast? Who is this beast that will operate under the spirit of altering, changing, which includes promoting persons of previously underrepresented minority identities? Who's hijacking? Who's the beast that's hijacking identities that don't belong to them? Let's go to Daniel chapter 7, starting at verse 24. And the 10 horns out of the kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall arise after them, and he shall be diverse. We see that word again, Shana, from the first, and he shall subdue the 3 kings. So let's deal with the 3 kings. But before we do that, let's deal with this word subdue. It says here to depress or sink, humiliate, bring down, cast down, put down, be lower, bring lower, lay lower, make lower, put lower. The ancient Hebrew word is shapal. As you see here, you see the Israeli shafel. I'm not getting into the semantics, but we see that part of the attributes of this beast, when it says suppress the three kings, it's referring to humiliate, cast down. In other words, take away their authority, bring to be lower. I mean, be lower, make lower, put lower. Okay, so who is this diverse beast who shall subdue the three kings? And who are the three kings? Second Kings chapter 3, starting at verse 7, gives you the answer here. It reads, starting at verse 7, and he went and sent to Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, saying, the king of Moab hath rebelled against me. Wilt thou go with me against Moab to battle? And he said, I will go up. I am as thou art, my people as thy people, and my horses as thy horses. Verse 8, and he said, which way shall we go up? And he answered, the way through the wilderness of Edom. And y'all know Edom, territory of the Edomites. We know Edom is associated with the Edomites, ultimately Esau. Verse 9, it reads, so the king of Israel went, and the king of Judah, and the king of Edom. So you see the three kings. It's prophesied in Daniel chapter 7, but we also can identify the three kings in 2 Kings chapter 3, starting at verse 7 through 10, as I just highlighted. All right, so let's go ahead and continue here. Now, I'm just laying down the foundation here. All right, I'm not going to read all of this here, but to continue on, the three kings are the king of Israel, the king of Judah, and the king of Edom, which is an Edomite. So let's go to verse 25. We're still in Daniel chapter 7. This is imperative. This is why I'm walking you guys through, so you can understand when I get to the 613 laws, you will understand this key beast. All right. This is a verse that many quote in the church and outside the church, in this awakening and outside this awakening, in many end time prophecy circles. When you start getting into eschatology. And I want to make this clear. There's a number of different eschatologies that are out there, whether it's Catholic eschatology, Christian eschatology, Islamic eschatology, Judaism eschatology, Hinduism eschatology. We just, that is just really dealing with the end time prophecy. All right. But anyway, starting at verse 25 here, it reads, and he shall speak great words. When we see the word great, it says Malah, Yah, or Malai. He shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out Bala, the saints, Quadayash, or Quadash. Well, so this is dealing with the Israelites. But it didn't stop there. It says the saints, really, this is dealing with the holy people, Israel, of the Most High. And to think, notice what it says, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of times. So family, make a note of that. This is what this beast specializes in, going to be able to manipulate, right before our eyes, not just changing the Shabbat, but also this beast can also manipulate times and laws on how you honor the Shabbat, how you honor the feast days. This is not just, when many teach this passage here, when I say many, I'm dealing with those that are into end time prophecy. They just focus on the Shabbat. This goes far deeper than the Shabbat. All right. So he shall speak great words against the Most High. So what is great words? What is great words? Let's define this. It says a word, command, discourse. So the key is that word discourse. Confusion, right? Speaking it says a word, command, discourse. So the key word to this understanding of discourse, I'm going to break it down here in a second as we get right into it. When we see the etymology dictionary definition of discourse, notice what it says: process of understanding, reasoning, thought, a running about, conversation. Are we not living in the information age that is triggering so many conversations? Social media is the tool, the medium that this beast specialize in their manipulation. We see reasoning. Here's the key: to run about, run to, and fro, hasten. Doesn't that sound like a warning that we were given about Hasatan going to and fro, seeking whom he may devour or can devour? That's also the definition of trolling when you do the etymological dictionary definition of that word trolling. It means to go about to or fro, praying, right? Come on, praying, Prey. So we're out. Let's go to the definition so we can bring this all together. It says to fail. See, that's the key. Changing times and laws so that way the Most High's people can fail. Think about it. When you hear it from the church about 613 laws, they'll say, hey, you break one, you break them all. To teach as if the law, statutes, and commandments is a burden. But Psalms 19, or the 19th book of Psalms, completely shuts that down. But they will have you believe, when they're dealing with the so-called the royal law, I'm not going to say so-called, the royal law, as James highlight, he wasn't just dealing with you either all in or out. He was dealing with one specific law that is called the royal law, which is loving your neighbors. Then he began to define it by quoting the commandments that covers loving thy neighbor. But anyway, see, this is the manipulation that many within the church would teach to discourage, or through conversation, where those that really want to please the Father, who the Father said, if you love me, obey my commandments. That was echoed by Christ. That was also echoed by his disciples. So that is an example of causing us to wear out. In other words, to give up, to fail, as you see here, use up completely. Notice number two, entry number two, to harass constantly. Are you guys not being harassed constantly because you purposed in your heart that you are going to honor the laws, the statutes, and the commandments, that you are going to honor the feast days, and all of a sudden you are being harassed by those that say that they love you? Come on, family. If you agree with what I just posted, if you are going through what I just explained just now, the harassment because you choose to honor the law, statutes, and commandments, the Jewish community as we know them, they don't go through this persecution. They don't get questioned on honoring Shabbat. They don't get questioned of honoring feast days. But we get that label of, well, you guys must be one of those Hebrew Israelites, taking an ethnicity and making it into a religion. That is what is called harassment constantly. All right. So what are some of the manipulations of this fourth beast? What are some of the manipulations? One of the manipulations is the unbiblical Noahide laws. The Noahide laws, you guys know what I'm talking about. That is a complete deception that is created by a specific group of people to say that the Most High have a set of laws for the non-blood descendants of Israel, the other nations, and another set of laws for his people. And that is an absolute lie, right? That's an absolute lie. There was one law for all those that was blood descendants of Abraham, and also those servants that dwelt in under the household or in the household of Abraham still had the same laws, starting with the law of circumcision. Whether they were blood descendants or not, they still had to obey the law of circumcision. Then when you go to Exodus chapter 12, you see the same thing. One law when you get down to verse 48, 49. One law for the homeborn and the strangers who want to do what? Connect with Israel, who want to honor Passover and some of the other things. But one law. But this unbiblical Noahide deception has been inserted into our educational system. So it starts with understanding one of the messiahs of the Israeli. I'm not saying Israel, Israeli. There's a difference between Israeli and Israel. Israeli are converts. Israeli, you're not original to that territory, even though you're born in that territory, but you're not originally from that territory. Your roots is elsewhere. So it starts with understanding this guy right here, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, right? Why am I bringing him up? How influential was Rabbi Schneerson? Well, you could find his name in an educational bill titled Education Day that officially implemented what is called the so-called Noahide Laws. Right? So the official implementation of the Noahide Laws is contributed to this guy. And here's the bill right here. Joint Resolution, HJ Resolution 104. So I'm going to play a couple of videos so that way it saves me time for having of going over each slide, because I really don't want to go through each slide breaking this down. But I have a couple of videos that are clips that I'm going to share real quick, and then we're going to continue to move forward, progressing this lesson. All right. So let's start with understanding the impact of Education Day. Let's start here.
How did we get to the place where the Governor General, Sir Patrick Allen, declared or proclaimed April 12th to be Education and Sharing Day? What was that process? And that will lead us to a better understanding as to your work here in Jamaica.
Okay. Let me give a little background about this concept of Education and Sharing Day. It was 1978. The President, Jimmy Carter, has seen the works of the great Rabbi Menachem Schneerson, called the Lubavitch Rebbe, of what he is doing about education, what he's doing about sharing, his global impact on the world. Of course, the Rebbe was born in Ukraine 120 years ago.
Starting in 1978, the Congress, our U.S. Congress, set aside the anniversary of the birth of Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson to be Education and Sharing Day. Education and Sharing Day recognizes the importance of values, ethics, character developments, and civic duty to help students become engaged, caring, and responsible citizens. The Rebbe dedicated his life to the promotion of education as a cornerstone of humanity and felt that in addition to academics, discussion of morals should not be neglected. He encouraged Americans to teach and share with the next generation the values that make good citizens, a strong nation, and a better world.
All right, so I thought I had a couple of additional videos. I didn't have enough time to upload it. I thought I uploaded videos that was going to break this down even more, but I'll just read this real quick for those that are not familiar with the education bill. And I want you guys to understand the influence of this particular Rebbe. He was looked to as a Messiah. He was the one that ordained Netanyahu. He is the one that ordained Netanyahu. So let me just read some of this real quick to for those that are not familiar with this particular resolution. As you see here, joint resolution to designate March 26, 1991 as Education Day, USA, whereas Congress recognizes the historical tradition of ethical values and principles which are the basis of civilized society and upon which our great nation was founded. Whereas these ethical values and principles have been the bedrock of society from the dawn of civilization. And when they were known as the seven Noahide Laws, whereas without these ethical values and principles, the edifice of civilization stands in serious peril of returning to chaos. Whereas society is profoundly concerned with the recent weakening of these principles that has resulted in crises that beleaguer and threaten the fabric of civilized society. Whereas the the justified preoccupation with these crises must not let the citizens of this nation lose sight of their responsibility to transmit these historical ethical values from our distinguished past to the generations of the future. Whereas the Lubavitch movement has fostered and promoted these ethical values and principles throughout the world. Whereas Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, leader of the Lubavitch movement, is universally accepted, universal, right? Catholic, universal, generic, comes from the primitive root word gene. Still dealing with bloodline. Come on, family. We've been duped by saying bloodline doesn't matter. Or, you know what? Doesn't matter what the color of Christ is. Doesn't matter what bloodline he is. You know, it doesn't matter. None of that matter because as long as the color of his blood was red. Come on, family. Come on, family. Universal. Every time you see that word universal, guess what? Add the word gene to it, and it tells you just how much bloodline matter. Anyway, it says it's universally accepted, universally respected and revered. And his 89th birthday falls on March 26, 1991. Whereas in tribute to this great spiritual leader, the Rebbe, this his 90th year will be seen as one of education and giving. The year in which we turn to education and charity to return the world to the moral and ethical values contained in the seven Noahide laws. Whereas this will be reflected in an international scroll of honor signed by the President of the United States and other heads of state. So we see how powerful this person is. What is the Lubavitch movement? Real quick here. The Lubavitch branch of Hasidism is known as Chabad. It's the most successful and most controversial movement in American Jewish life. Schneerson's message that the Messiah was nigh became the leitmotif of the movement in 1991, when the Rebbe suddenly and urgently began advocating a series of programs to induce the Redeemer to reveal himself. Let me read that part again. Urgently began advocating a series of programs to induce the Redeemer to reveal himself. And that's one of the things he charged the young Netanyahu to be able to go out and start all kinds of turmoil, cause all kinds of trouble to supposedly speed up the process, expedite the process of bringing on their Redeemer, the Redeemer that they declared, not the true Redeemer of the scriptures. His followers identified him, at least potentially, as the long expected Messiah. So the Rebbe Schneerson was looked at as a Messiah, right? Many Lubavitchers, how many is a matter of dispute, continue today to view him as the Messiah, who either is not actually dead or will return from the dead. And guess what? Donald Trump's children is connected to the Lubavitch movement, this Lubavitch group. So their Messiah is also known as Rebbe. What is a Rebbe? Real quick. Rebbe means my master or my teacher. Whether you are a small child learning the alphabet or an expert scholar sailing the seas of the Talmud. You call your teacher Rebbe. There's another meaning to the title Rebbe, one especially associated with a rabbi. They call him Baal Shem Tov. That's a whole nother discussion when you start getting into charms. That's right, Baal Shem Tov. Notice the name Baal, Lord, Baal Shem, Sham, right? Name. We know this could be the name of Shem, Noah's son, but also Sham or Shem or Shame, however pronunciation you want to go with, also means reputation, fame, glory, characteristic. Tav or Tha, that also means signs, proof, evidence. So the Baal Shem Tov was a teacher who not only touched your mind and heart, but could reach into your essential being and guide you to find yourself there. All right. So how influential was Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson? How influential? I just gave it to you. All right. I just gave it to you. How influential was this guy? So this beast, going back to this beast, still part of this beast, I want to use that as an example. This beast will create through manipulation, will create so much discourse through the media that many will be worn out. Many of our brothers and sisters will be worn out, will be good for nothing and ready to give up. What are some of the other things of confusion? What are some of the other things of confusion that this beast will bring forth? This is why when it says changing times and laws, in other words, manipulating times, manipulating laws, statutes, and commandments. So let me give you a couple of examples here. I'm going to play 3 clips, and then we're going to continue here. And I want you to really listen to how they explain the Talmud, how they explain Genesis chapter 1, even their thoughts on Adam before Eve came about. Peep this out. Let's start with the Talmud, and then we'll follow that by Genesis 1:1, and then what the rabbi had to say about Adam. Here we go.
We would not know how to live on the Sabbath if it were not for the oral law. We would not know what the laws of the dietary laws of kashrut are if it were not for the oral law. We would not know what the tefillin, what the boxes on our arms and heads that we wear every morning in our prayer service, what they're supposed to be. And in fact, all of Judaism would be completely mysterious. It would be voodoo if it were not for the oral law.
But the Zohar insists on reading the words in the precise order in which they appear in Hebrew. Bereshit, in the beginning. Bara, it created. Elohim, God. In the beginning, it created God. The Zohar takes that to mean, in the beginning, infinity created God. Now, what could that possibly mean? God is now the object of the verse, not the subject, which sounds impossible or heretical, but the Zohar, I think, is saying that infinity is the true reality of God. Anything else that we call God is puny compared to that. That's our own imagination or our own estimate of what God could be. That's our own imagination or our own estimate of what God could be.
That's our own imagination or our own estimate of what God could be.
It doesn't do justice to the true reality of God. So infinity brought about all that we think of as God. And for the Zohar, that's the meaning of the opening of Genesis. In the beginning, infinity created what we call God.
Milamed, it teaches us that Adam not only named the animals, but he dated all the animals. But he was not able to be at peace with any of them until finally Chava was created.
Hashem didn't have a problem with that?
I mean, dated means trying to use a nice word.
What does dated means? What do you mean by dated?
Dated means he took her out to Pisgah.
Dated.
They went out to the Chosan. They had a little, Monte.
Relationship? Not relationship, just let's keep it rated PG.
We're going to keep it rated. We're going to keep it rated PG for the G for grandmas for this discussion. But that's what he did. It says he went out with the animals.
Oh, Miss Sophia. No, Miss Sophia, no!
I just want to make sure you guys understand. This is why I teach the way that I teach. This is why I go in the way that I go in, because this is very important for us to understand this. Very important for us to understand this. So let me give us a quick shout outs, because I see my brother Charles Miller. I thank you for the love and support. Family, let's show Charles Miller love and support for the contribution tonight, or excuse me, tonight. I'm so used to doing my lives at night, but this evening, really appreciate Charles Miller, brother Charles Miller, for the love and support. And family, let's show Charles Miller some love and support for the contribution today. All right. Really appreciate it. And for those who want to contribute, I'll just post the Cash App inside the chat, just in case any of you guys want to contribute. So let me just post it into the chat. And moderators, feel free to periodically share this with in the chat, because I don't have time to pin it up. So let's see here. All right. But thank you again, Brother Miller. Thank you for the love and support. So family, let's continue here. So getting back to this beast, and I'm sure you guys are getting an idea of this beast, right? So, and who this beast is. So this beast will create through manipulation, will create so much discourse through media that many will become worn out, be good for nothing, and want to just give up. In other words, give up on the Most High because of all these religious systems. So again, question everything. The 613 laws. So the next point I want to make as we really knock down this whole 613 law teaching is this here. What's the difference between traditions of the elders and commandments of Yah? Let me say that again. What's the difference between traditions of the elders and the commandments of Yah? Let's go to Colossians chapter 2. So we might as well kill a couple of birds with one stone. We already proved with details of what the fourth beast, the manipulation of this fourth beast. But we're not just dealing with the name stealers. We're dealing with Catholicism, Christianity, guess what? Islam. All are part of that manipulation, that system of man, 666. But this is a passage that many Christians would use to justify celebrating Christmas, celebrating Easter, celebrating St. Patrick's Day, celebrating these man-made holidays, and they would use this to downplay or speak against those that are honoring the law, statutes, and commandments, and use this to justify them not being able, them not having to or being required to honor the commandments of Yah. So Colossians chapter 2, starting at verse 16, it reads, "Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of an holy day or of the new moon or of the Sabbath days, which are a shadow of things to come, but the body of Hamashiach," right? The body of Christ. So what is this passage really saying? Why did Paul write this letter, and why did he have to address this here? The answer is here because Paul is not disregarding the feast days. He's not disregarding the Shabbat, the feast days. And they also had a new moon meal, if you study the text on that. He's not discrediting because he's saying the law, statutes, and commandments, the holy feast days, the Shabbats, it says they are a shadow of things to come. So it's a good thing. Let me say that again. These feast days are a shadow of things to come. The Shabbat is a shadow of things to come. So they are not a bad thing. So what is the point that Apostle Paul is making here? He says, let no man beguile you. Let no man deceive you. Let no man what? Trick you of your reward in a voluntary humility and worshiping of angels. Now, see, Paul is now showing you false prophets are embarrassing people, belittling people, putting pressure on people to worship what? Worshiping, as you see, worshiping angels, intruding into those things which he hath not seen, vainly puffed up by his fleshly mind. So there were false prophets that had the people of the Most High tricking them into what? Feeling guilty of not worshiping angels and other things that is contrary to the law, statutes, and commandments. Verse 19, and not holding the head, from which all the body by joints and bands have nourishment ministered, and knit together increaseth with increase of Yahweh. Now I got to break this down more for those that may not understand what Paul is saying here. So is Apostle Paul teaching against honoring the feast days and the Shabbat? Absolutely not. Why? Because Paul, he honored it, right? So who is he actually speaking against? Who is he actually speaking and warning against? The answer is in verse 4-8. Here it is. And this I say, lest any man should beguile you with enticing words, for though I be absent in the flesh, yet I am with you in the spirit. In other words, he's praying for them, joying and beholding your order and the steadfastness of your faith in Hamashiach. In other words, the Christ. As ye have therefore received Hamashiach, Yahushai, Adonai, so walk ye in him, rooted and built up in him, and established, in other words, stable in the faith. Aman, consistency. That's what faith really means, consistency, as ye have been taught, abounding therein with thanksgiving. Here's the kicker. Beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy. Wait a minute. Philosophy, that's synonymous to theologies. See, there's tens of thousands of Christian philosophies, Catholic philosophies alone, that they use this to literally persuade the people to thinking that they don't have to honor the law, statutes, and commandments. That's done away with. Hey, if you choose to do it, that's for the blood descendants of Israel. But Isaiah 56 says something different. It says for the sons of the strangers who want to have a relationship with the Father, they have to do what? Take hold of his covenant, which is the 10 commandments, and honor Shabbats, which are the what? Feast days. Come on, family, that's scripture. So it says here, do not allow people, and I'm paraphrasing here, don't let these people who's pumped up with these theologies deceive you, spoil you, have you good for nothing, wear you out with their deception, pushing as they promote and push the traditions of man. Want to downplay, want to wear you out, make you feel bad, want to harass you about honoring the feast days, honoring the Shabbat, but at the same time, they're pushing traditions of men on you. Christmas is not. That is not scripture. That is a tradition of man. Easter, it's not scripture. Even though in some of your translations, you'll see the word Easter as a transliteration of the Greek word Pascha, which Pascha is a transliteration of Pasach, the ancient Hebrew word Pasach. But that has nothing to do with Easter, Eastre, right? That has nothing to do, the Passover has nothing to do with Easter, Easter eggs, Eastre, has nothing to do with that. So that's what Paul is teaching here. He's saying, hey, look, don't let these people come at you with these spoil you, take away your zeal through philosophies or theologies and vain deceit after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Hamashiach. Why? Because Hamashiach did what? He honored the feast days. He honored the law, statutes, and commandments. But they are teaching us, when I say us, they're teaching our people and others. When I say the they, many leaders from the Christian church, from the Catholic church, and some in this awakening, teaching you that, hey, we don't have to honor the law, statutes, and commandments, even though Christ did. You don't have to honor the feast days, even though Christ did. You don't have to honor any of these things, even though the disciples did, even though Apostle Paul is on record honoring the feast days. Come on, family. So who is Paul actually speaking and warning against? I ask this question again. Here it is again. Lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit after the traditions of men. Paul is actually speaking against those who are teaching the traditions of men. Traditions of men is synonymous to the phrase tradition of the elders. Okay, so let's go ahead and deal with the traditions of the elders. Let's go to Matthew chapter 15, starting at verse 1. And we're going to put some additional things to rest because we're dealing with the fourth beast, manipulation. Then came to Yahushua, Jesus the Christ, scribes and Pharisees, which were of Jerusalem, saying, why do thy disciples, Lamad, transgress the traditions of the elders, Zakwan, for they wash not their hands when they eat bread? Verse 3, but Yahushua answered and said unto them, why do ye also transgress the commandments of Yahweh by your traditions? Oh, this is a powerful exchange because we see that these Pharisees are trying to push the law of washing hands, right? That is designated for the Levitical priests, and trying to superimpose that on the disciples. So being that there was no law that you had to wash your hands before you eat food. So therefore, the Pharisees is taking the law that was created for the priests and trying to apply it to the disciples, and now creating what? A tradition of man, and trying to enforce it as if it is an actual commandment. So let's go to Exodus chapter 30, starting at verse 18. Let's deal with the hand washing. It says here, and Yahweh spake unto Moses, saying, thou shalt also make a laver of brass, and his foot also of brass to wash withal, and thou shalt put it between the tabernacle of the congregation, the altar, thou shalt put water therein. Verse 19, for Aaron and his sons shall wash, rakats shall wash their hands and their feet. So this is dealing with the responsibilities of who? The Levites that are working inside the tabernacle. When they go into the tabernacle of the congregation, they shall wash with water that they die not. Or when they come near to the altar to minister, to burn offerings made by fire unto Yahweh. Verse 21, so they shall wash their hands and their feet, that they die not, and it shall be a statute forever to them. To who? The priests. This has nothing to do with the disciples. This has nothing to do with the lay people, even to him and to his seed throughout their generations. Right? So Aaron and his sons shall wash their hands. So the second major piece of furniture in the courtyard of the tabernacle was the bronze wash basin. The bronze wash basin played a very significant role in the priest's service to Yah. The bronze basin was to be placed between the tabernacle and the altar of the burnt offerings. So before a priest could go into the holy place and the most holy place, his first order of business was at the altar or burnt offering. The bronze wash basin was the next step in following the path of holiness, of entering into the presence of Yah. The sole purpose of the bronze wash basin was for the priests to wash their hands and feet, right? And we could confirm this also with Leviticus chapter 15, verse 2 and 3. Speaking to the children of Israel and saying to them, when any man hath a running issue out of his flesh, because of his issue, he is unclean. Verse 3. And this shall be his uncleanness in his issue, whether his flesh run with his issue or his flesh be stopped from his issue. It is his uncleanness. So the law of washing hands and feet, they were for the priest. They were assigned to the priest. Okay, so the other law of washing hands and involves a man and a woman who is experiencing discharges. I didn't put it here because I didn't want to get into all of that. So washing hands before eating is a tradition or a man-made, right? Let me put it here. I said man-made. This is a typo here. So washing hands before eating is a man-made tradition. That's what it's supposed to say. Excuse the typo, family. Gotta double check here. So let's go back to Matthew 15, starting at verse 7 and 9. We want to skip down because this is what many of these the church would take out of context to say, hey, chapter 15 is justified in eating unclean foods. As we see, chapter 15 has nothing to do with eating unclean food. It had everything to do with eating with dirty hands. But many would take this chapter and they would pick and choose. They would take scriptures that they want to cherry pick and try to say, hey, look, this is all about the feast. The dietary laws. But let me prove that this has nothing to do with the dietary laws. I already set the tone. We're dealing with what? Eating with dirty hands. So let's skip down to verse 7. It says, ye hypocrites. This is Christ talking to these Pharisees. Ye hypocrites. Well, did Isaiah prophesy of you, saying, this people draweth nigh unto me, their mouth and honoreth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. But in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. Wait a minute. So Christ is teaching out of the law and the prophets, right? We see the traditions of the elders. Now we see what? Doctrines and commandments of men, right? Traditions of men, doctrines of elders or traditions of the elders. Now we see commandments of men. So this is something that Israel had to address on a number of occasions. And here it is. Now Christ is addressing this very thing. But in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men, right? So doctrines of the commandments of men is also referred to the precepts of men. That's correct, family. You have also the phrase precepts of men. Let's confirm this. Let's go to Isaiah 29:13. Wherefore Yahweh, in other words, your translation would say the Lord, but it's actually Yahweh in that passage. This passage said, for as much as this people draw near me with their mouth and with their lips do honor me, but have removed their heart far from me, and their fear toward me is taught by the precept of men. There it is, family. So did Apostle Paul teach against honoring the feast days? Did he teach against honoring the Shabbat? No, family. Paul is not teaching do as I say, not as I do, or vice versa. He's not teaching that. Did Apostle Paul honor Passover? Well, let's go to Acts chapter 18, verse 21. The answer is here. But bade them farewell, saying, I must by all means keep, shamar, keep, execute this feast, Chag, that comes in Jerusalem, but I will return again unto you if Elohim will. And he sailed from Ephesus. So did the early so-called church, I'm just using that phrase for now. We know that word church is does not go beyond the 4th century when it comes to being associated with the Christians and the Catholics, right? So just for the sake of discussion, we're going to use this word church, right? So did the so-called early church honor the Passover and the Feast of the Unleavened Bread? Well, what was the ethnicity of the assembly of Corinth? What was the ethnicity there? Did they need a blood sacrifice? Let's go to Corinthians chapter 5, starting at verse 7. 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7. Purge out therefore the old leaven, that ye may be a new lump, as ye are unleavened. Wait a minute. So this is the feast of the unleavened bread. For even Mashiach, our Passover, Pasach, is sacrificed for us. Paul didn't stop there. Therefore, let us keep the Hebrew word shamar, which means execute, the feast, chag, not with old leaven. Now you see he's dealing with the feast of unleavened bread, and he's dealing with Passover, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. And guess what he went on to say? Let me go back here. Did I put it here? Yeah, but anyway, it's right here. I almost overtalked myself. But again, going back here, he said, "Let us keep the feast." So Paul is teaching this assembly to honor the feast days. Not only was Apostle Paul honoring the feast days, Paul taught honoring the feast days. Come on, family, it's right here in the scriptures. So 2 Timothy chapter 4, starting at verse 3, is what I want to highlight real quick, a key prophecy. It says here, for the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lusts shall they heap to themselves teachers having itching ears. Verse 4, and they shall turn away their ears from the truth and shall be turned unto fables. But watch thou in all things, endure afflictions, do the work of an evangelist, make full proof of thy ministry. All right. So is it impossible to honor the commandments of Yahweh? No. Let's go to Luke chapter 1, starting at verse 5. It's not impossible, family. We have an example in what is called really it's the renewed covenant, but it's labeled as the New Testament. Look at what we have here. There was in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias of the course of Abia, and his wife was the daughter of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. So both of them descendants of the Levites. They part of the tribe of Levi. Verse 6, and they were both righteous before Yahweh, walking in all the commandments, not some, walking in all the commandments and ordinances of Yahweh. You see the word blameless. In Hebrew, you see the word thamayam or thamyam. In the Israeli, it's pronounced tamim, which means perfect. So it says that they were perfect. They had integrity. They was without spot or blemish. That's still dealing with that word Thamayam or Tamim in the Israeli, saying that they had integrity. They honored the commandments and no one can point fingers at them. But the church would tell you it's a burden. You can't keep the commandments. Come on, family. Come on, family. Let's continue. So they were walking in all the commandments and ordinances of Yahweh. But guess what? There was no 613, right? They controlled their thoughts, their minds, their tongues, their behaviors. They were diligently seeking to please Yahweh in all they did. So again, are there 613 commands? Are there 613 laws? Are there 613 commands or laws? Is this biblical or an invention, right? It is an invention, family. Still tying into the manipulation. Who created the doctrine of the 613 commands or laws? Let's start with the times of Israel. There are not 613 biblical commands. Israel Drazen. Let's see what he has to say. And matter of fact, I'm going to post this link inside the comment section just so that way you guys can have this for your reference. You can vet the source. I don't have a problem with sharing my sources, because family, when it's all said and done, you have to stand before the Father and make your own decisions and give an account for what you do, what you don't do. This lesson is not trying to beat you up in the head, forcing myself on you, but just trying to give you proper clarity on certain things that are circulating that most really don't know. All right. Most really don't know. All right. So this is the article that I'm reading from. You guys can vet it, go and you can determine whether or not if I'm misrepresenting this source. All right. All right. Almost done here. Okay. Here we go. There are not 613 biblical commands, despite the rabbinic concept that there are 613 biblical commands. A careful examination produces a much smaller number. Interestingly, in his list of the 613 Maimonides, includes commands, or Maimonides, excuse me for mispronouncing the word, is Maimonides. All right, I don't know why I just want to say Maimonides, but it's Maimonides, including commands the rabbis said were biblical in origin, even though they are not explicit in the Torah. The following is from my recent book, Mysteries of Judaism II, or Mysteries of Judaism 2, excuse me, how the rabbis and others changed Judaism. And I want to make this clear. Christ did not practice Judaism. Israel did not practice Judaism. Abraham did not practice Judaism. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did not practice Judaism. Moses did not practice Judaism. None of the ancient Israelites practiced Judaism. That is a religion of man. None of them practice Christianity. None of them practice Catholicism. None of them practice being a Muslim. All right, so let's go to the source. Page 89. One of the fundamental principles of Orthodox Judaism is the belief that there is both a written and an oral Torah. See, that's the deception. See, they'll tell you that, hey, that they have a written Torah, which we know is the law and the prophets. But then they go further and say, hey, when the Most High gave the commandments to Moses, when he handed it down to Moses, because the commandments started with Adam, went from Adam to Noah, went from Noah to Shem, went from Shem. And if you really go deeper into the text, just how, what's his name? I can't think of his name. Eber, who is the father of all the Hebrews. And you see, when you study the words there, the deeper discovery, you see how he stood on the things of the Most High. But then you take it all the way down to Abraham and see how with Abraham, the covenant was handed down to him. And then through Abraham, his son, Isaac, who is the seed, the promised seed. And through Isaac, this is what we get down to Israel, right? Israel, Jacob is where the covenant was handed down to. So what they say is, when the covenant was handed down to Israel, given to Israel, the descendants of Jacob, at Mount Sinai, they teach, when I say they, the name stealers, they teach that Moses was given two Torahs. He was given the written Torah and an oral Torah. And so they teach that it wasn't until like the 3rd and 4th century, because of persecution, supposedly, they decided to write down the oral Torah. And this is where you get the Mishnah, the two variants of the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, the Jerusalem or Jerusalemi Talmud, right? They said now they wrote it down, and now guess what, family? Now supposedly there's two Torahs. Come on, family. Come on, family. That is the true deception. And in their anti-Torah, which is called the Talmud, the Mishnah, that's what they say. Some of the things I played with the rabbi stating that Adam dated the animals. So one of the fundamental principles of Orthodox Judaism is the belief that there is both a written Torah, a written and an oral Torah. Last point I want to make, right? I'm not sure if you guys caught the racial overtone here of this particular rabbi as he was explaining the Talmud, because he said without the Talmud, right? Without the Talmud, the Torah will be voodoo. Who do they associate voodoo with? Who do the world associate voodoo with? What group of people? How do they look? They're not referring this to a group of Caucasians. So listen to what he said again.
We would not know how to live on the Sabbath if it were not for the oral law. We would not know what the laws of the dietary laws of kashrut are if it were not for the oral law. We would not know what the tefillin, what the boxes on our arms and heads that we wear every morning in our prayer service, what they're supposed to be. And in fact, all of Judaism would be completely mysterious. It would be voodoo if it were not for the oral law.
So he said without the Talmud, Torah would be voodoo. All right, family. And if any of the clips are being muted out, it's not by my doing. That's YouTube. So I apologize if you guys, some of you guys didn't hear the clip. Either reboot your or restart your browser. If not, it may just be simply an issue with YouTube. All right. All right. So let's continue here. Let's continue here. My apologies, family, if you didn't hear that. All right. So let's continue here. So he goes on to say here that if a Jew does not accept this teaching, the Jew is not Orthodox and is a rebel. Right. So it goes on to say, it goes on to say these rabbis insist upon believing that the old Torah is divine, even though it differs radically from what is stated explicitly in the written Torah. Then when we skip over to page 95, it says, despite the rabbinic concept that there are 613 biblical commands, a careful examination produced a much smaller number. Increasingly, in his list of the 613 Maimonides included commands that the rabbis said were biblical in origin, even though they are not explicit in the Torah. So, family, number one, I'm sure some of you guys did what I did when we transitioned our ministry over. Before I did this, I did a list. I was like, let me research the 613 laws. I wanted to get a list so that way I could properly teach our assembly. So I got a list of them. And when I start reading the so-called 613 laws, I start seeing duplicates. I started seeing duplicate laws within it. So I was like, wait a minute, this is not 613, it's much lower. So this is what led me to doing this teaching. And I've done this teaching ages ago, but I'm bringing it, publicly to you guys, right? So that's what put me on this path here. It goes on to say the first report that the Torah contains 613 commandments dates to the 3rd century CE, when Rabbi Simlai mentioned this concept in a sermon that is recorded in the Babylonian Talmud, Makat 23b. And keep in mind, family, the Talmud was not actually written supposedly until like the third or fourth century. So they're saying this is supposed to have been an oral tradition handed down. All right. But anyway, the Talmud states Rabbi Simlai gave as a sermon 613 commandments were communicated. All right. So let's go straight to the source, not just reading what he said. Let's go to the source. This is Makat 23b, right? And this is what it says. Rabbi Simlai taught there were 613 mitzvot stated that, let me get it again. Let me slow down. There were 613 mitzvot stated to Moses in the Torah, consisting of 365 prohibitions corresponding to the number of days in the solar system, and 248 positive mitzvot corresponding to the number of a person's limbs. Come on, family. You guys actually think that this is biblical? Saying that there's 365 supposedly, right? 365 supposedly laws based upon each law for 365, and we know that originally there was 360 days, but saying that each law, right, part of it represents a day, each day of the 365 calendar year. Wait a minute, this still taking us back to Daniel chapter 7, changing times and laws. Then 248 positive mitzvahs corresponding to the number of a person's limb. Come on, family. This is coming out of their so-called Talmud. It's coming out of their Torah, but not the Torah. What is the verse that alludes to this? It is written, Moses commanded us the Torah and inheritance of the congregation of Jacob. Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 4. The word Torah in terms of its numerical value. Now it's dealing with numerology. But let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 33, starting at verse 1, and tell me if you see anything about a 613 law. Let's read it real quick. And I encourage you guys, open it up in your Bibles as well. Show me if you see anything inside this passage that the Talmud made reference to. Show me if you see anything in there that says anything about 613 laws. Let's go ahead and read it. Let's read it together. All right, here we go. And this is the blessing wherewith Moses, the man of Alahayim, blessed the children of Israel before his death. Verse 2. And he said, Yahweh came from Sinai and rose up from Seir unto them. He shined forth from Mount Paran, and he came with 10,000 of saints. From his right hand went a fiery law for them. Verse 3. Yea, he loved the people. All his saints are in thy hands, and they sat down at thy feet. Everyone shall receive of thy words. Moses commanded us a law, even the inheritance of the congregation of Jacob. So guess what, family? We don't see anything about 613 laws. Do you guys see it inside your scriptures? Do you guys see anything about 613 laws in the passages that the Talmud made reference to? So the blessings of Yahweh's glorious, majestic presence is what we highlighted there. The blessing of Yahweh's love and care was highlighted in what we read. The blessings of Yahweh's gift of true worship was highlighted there. The blessings of Yahweh's instructions, the gift of the law that he had given his people, is what we see identified there. But there is no mention of the supposed 613 commandments, or should we say laws? No mention of that. So why is this lie embraced? Why is this lie embraced? Why are leaders teaching this? Whether they're in the church or outside the church, in this awakening or outside of this awakening, why are they keep teaching this false information? So let's go back to this article, Times of Israel. There are not 613 biblical commands. Let's go back here. All right. It continues here. It says, in short, a careful examination of Maimonides' Sefer HaMitzvah, which contains his listing of 613 commands, and his Mishnah, Torah, his code of Jewish laws, shows that the rabbis changed Judaism. They gave the Hebrew Bible a meaning that is not the literal meaning of the text. So what this particular person is exposing is saying that by coming up with this 613 law doctrine, they began to what? Give meaning, a whole new meaning to exactly versus the exact meaning of what the text says. They began to what? Create their own doctrine. They began to what? Create times and laws. Wearing Yah's people out with these times and laws. They began to what? Use manipulation to change, to alter what the text actually says. They gave the Hebrew Bible a meaning that is not the literal meaning of the text. Changed the biblical laws. Daniel warned of this, and invented laws that were later included in the list of 613 biblical commands. So how many commands are relevant today? Not only is the number 613 the result of a 3rd century sermon, which the list debated by many rabbis, and including commands instituted by the rabbis who considered them as if they were biblical. But most of the inventory of 613 commands are not relevant today. See, that's another point that we want to point out. Many of the laws that was in place, for example, let's just start with the Levitical priests. There was laws that was designated, as we highlighted earlier, with washing hands, had nothing to do with the lay people. There's certain laws that were in place that just no longer in place. Even in this country we live in, you look up some of the laws that's still in place in some of the places that you live, it doesn't apply to you, right? It doesn't apply to you. You got laws that's still on the books about parking a horse in front of your house. Do you have a horse? So it doesn't apply to you. Come on, family. And then they try to put almost an Egyptian feel to it. The 613 laws, right? And then you have the positive and negative laws. Come on, family. But anyway, how many of the commands are relevant today? That's the question. Let's go back over to this article and we wrap this up. Let's wrap this up. And the Sefer HaMitzvah, Maimonides enumerated the positive commands that a Jew in the ordinary course of his life has always the opportunity to fill. Maimonides record only 60 positive commands, not 248 that are applicable to men. The number for women is only 46. Chauvel states that one could add 23 other commands to the list. Commands that were added by Rabbi Israel M. Kagan. And you see his life. Well, he was born in 1839 and died in 1933. This is not ancient information. These are laws that most Jews rarely, if ever, needed to observe, such as redeeming the firstling of a donkey, canceling claims in the sabbatical year, and unloading a tired animal. Even if these 23 are added to the Maimonides, 60 for men, 46 for women, the total of 83 and 69 fall short of 248. The traditional number of positive commands. So family, we just completed this here. That's the end of this presentation here. There's no need to draw it out, family, but I just want to take a little time out to you guys and just really address this here, family. And I hope this helps you. I hope this blesses you. I know that this is a brief lesson, but I just want to take the time out today to give you proper clarity on exactly what's what, because I know it can be confusing. What is real and what is not real? What is biblical and what's not biblical? What's actual and what's not? And I know that because of the repetition of hearing certain things, you would think that it's actually true. But I want to make sure you understand, family, these people, these name stealers, these religions of men, the systems of men, they left no rock uncovered, unturned. So don't get caught up in if you break one, you break them all, which leads me to the next lesson that I will do, dealing with the royal law, giving you proper clarity of what the royal law really is. So with that being said, family, really appreciate the love and support. Be safe on those roads for those that are in commute from work, heading home. I pray traveling mercies to you guys until we come again. With that being said, be blessed. In the words of Moses, by way of the Most High in Exodus chapter 13, verse 14 and verse 13 and 14, fear ye not, stand still, see the salvation of Yahweh. These Egyptians that you see here today will never have power over you ever again. The Most High will fight for you. But here's the kicker, family. We have to hold our peace. Can't go back, can't stay here, keep moving forward. Shalom.
Listen, Genesis chapter 11, verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this back, Genesis 14, verse 13, Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was black. Abraham, born in the city of a black man, called Nimrod, grandson of Ham. Ham had 4 sons. One was named Canaan. Here, let me do some explaining. Abraham, Isaac was Jacob had 12 sons, for real, and these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel.